Wrestling is not above airing its dirty laundry in public. Even if it goes over the fans' head, if there's a dig to be had, most companies will take it, right down to the then WWF, running those awful Huckster, Nacho Man and Billionaire Ted skits as they started their war with WCW. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just YouTube them. My word. These didn't work as intended, so you would assume all involved would have learned their lesson, but of course they didn't. It just became a distant memory when another opportunity came around, and this sums things up. Sacrificing TV time just to flip somebody off? I don't get it. I'm Simon from What Culture. Please do subscribe, it's free, and this is 10 shots WWE fired at wrestlers that you didn't notice. Number 10, Razor Ramon. If you watched the WWE Hall of Fame in 2014, you will have heard Scott Hall utter the words, "Bad times don't last, but bad guys do." Yes, that was the worst Scott Hall impression ever. This was especially poignant though, because in the years prior to this, Hall's personal issues had been well documented. Even best friend Kevin Nash worried it was only going one way, and it was so normal in 2007, WWE was even making jokes about it. It's not cool, by the way, but the truth is the truth. It's a thing and became more of a thing when Mr. Kennedy was stood in the ring armed with a live microphone. Building up to his feud against Shawn Michaels, Kennedy had various fake versions of people from HBK's past, one of who was Razor Ramon. When this was over, Kennedy quipped that he was just pleased Razor turned up, which was a direct shot at what had happened 24 hours prior. Scott had no-showed a TNA pay-per-view, got a verbal beatdown from Samoa Joe because of it, and had become the talk of the locker room once more. Why it then had to appear on WWE TV, I don't know, but it did, and I would guess if you didn't care about the competition, you'd have no idea what the hell was going on. Number 9, authors of Painful Patter. On the 2nd of December 2019, the AOP were back on Raw properly. They were shown arriving at the arena, and when Charlie Caruso went to interview them, Akam and Razor responded in Albanian and Punjabi. When Caruso asked them to translate, the pair simply said, "You look lovely tonight." This was lost on me at the time, but social media was convinced afterwards that it was a dig at the Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer. A week earlier, he had made some comments about WWE announcers being young and cute, which were soon taken out of context and transformed into a Twitter storm. The usual then. 6 days later, we had performers commenting on her looks, which hadn't really happened previously, leaving many to raise an eyebrow as to what this was all about. Number 8, Chris Jericho and Howard Finkel. Another angle that has been lost to the passages of time. At one point, Chris Jericho did align himself with legendary ring announcer Howard Finkel. If this does sound weird, it's because it was, but there was a reason for it, and it kinda tied into WCW. Most of Y2J's early WWE run was a throwback to what he had done in World Championship Wrestling. They got so off track that even Vince McMahon went to Jericho and told him that he was having buyer's remorse. That is in Chris's own autobiography too, so it's more real than fairies. The low point of this was when somebody suggested Jericho needed a new Ralphus, the ludicrous security guard who had become his lackey for a good while across the pond. While that had an air of originality to it because it was so stupid, doing the same thing with Finkel, someone who'd been part of the WWE makeup for ages, didn't work. It's just odd, especially when the Fink and ring announcer Tommy Chimel were fighting each other. Who asked for this? There was yet more winks and nudges as Jericho called Howard the Fink before Finkel rushed to the squared circle with the Ultimate Warrior's music blaring through the arena. Howard even shook the ropes. This had worked years earlier when Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe had aped Hulk Hogan's entrance, but this was night and day. Number 7, Mauro Ranallo lights the fuse. Unless you've been living under a rock, you will know that 2019 was the year that AEW went head-to-head with NXT. It gave birth to the Wednesday Night Wars, and it breathed some new life into the industry. There's something about a ratings battle that is so fascinating. This reared its head constantly, with both sides taking shots at each other, from Cody Rhodes smashing a Triple H-themed throne to AEW running adverts that straight up said their company was better than their rivals. Not all were this blatant though. On the second episode of NXT that went head-to-head with All Elite Wrestling, commentator Mauro Ranallo was very coy on the words he used. Knowing the Rivals product show was called Dynamite, Mauro simply said that NXT was lighting the fuse. Not only was that a smart tie into the competition, but actually also a line from AEW's opening theme music. That literally goes, light the fuse, bring the boom, Dynamite. Admittedly sounds like my first music song, but whatever. This was either a slip of a tongue or NXT letting everybody know they were more than ready for a war. Number 6, The Rock takes on the establishment. During the peak of his wrestling popularity, The Rock had as many catchphrases as he did fans. He reeled them off like his life depended on it, but in late 1998 he decided to take a different direction. His confidence was so high at this point the Great One, for no real reason, just started to quote other people's famous one-liners as he corrected himself. Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Bret Hart, the Macho Man, all were on the receiving end, and it was just proof of how over Dwayne Johnson was. He could do this, and everybody loved it. The real twist was that 2 years prior, this would have been nothing more than a scratch of the now WCW stars, and yet here it felt like a knockout blow. The crowd loved it even though he was a bad guy, and it was all setting up his huge face turn a year later. In short, nobody could stop The Rock. Not even proper wrestling legends. Number 5, the Would Be Jabba. This one is so niche, I'm amazed it got the green light, but again, never underestimate the shots WWE is willing to take. In short, it all comes down to what companies call their jobbers, or those whose sole role it is to put other guys over. UWF had Davey Meltzer at one point, for example, and that one doesn't take a genius to figure it out.
Look at this, right off the bat, that's typical of Dr. Death. Did you see that attack on Davey Meltzer?
WWE did the same in 1992, although they decided to focus on other wrestling news outlets, namely the Pro Wrestling Torch. That's why Bruce Mitchell made his WWE debut here, which also just happened to be the name of the head scribe at that outlet. Mitchell even addressed this on his own Twitter and admitted he found out about it while discussing WWE tapings with the one and only Meltzer. You'd have to have been a super fan to be clued up on this, but it didn't stop it from happening in the first place. Number 4, CM Punk and Vince McMahon. If you're a wrestling fan of any length of time, you were probably hooked by the CM Punk leaves WWE saga in 2014. While not totally shocking, it was still major news, especially as Punk had walked out of the company. Vince McMahon was never going to be happy about that, and despite numerous attempts to fix this relationship, it did not happen. It spilled out into the real world after the voice of the voiceless aired all his grievances on Colt Cabana's podcast. The level of detail was astounding. The one piece of information that seemed to truly hit people hard was that Punk's P45 got to him on his wedding day. Sheesh. Now there's two stories here, and you're allowed to pick which one you believe. But McMahon's tale was that this was pure coincidence, right down to apologizing to CM when he guested on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast. Many thought this was lip service, others believed it, but it certainly did seem like WWE did this as a shot at the former champion to remind him that they will always have the upper hand. This is one of the many reasons why CM Punk may never actually wrestle again. There is a lot of red tape. Number 3, the power of the towel. Ever since SmackDown came to Fox in October 2019, there has been a red carpet rolled out for WWE's Blue brand. There was too much money at stake not to do this, and it's very much a work in progress. You'd have to assume that the power people behind the scenes would like to get the program past 3 million viewers at least. This is a multi-pronged strategy, as not only are things being focused on in the ring, but it's also happening outside of it too. Go and check out WWE on Fox's Twitter account if you haven't already, for example. It pokes fun at all of the dumb stuff we see each and every week and feels very much like it's aimed at fans rather than the corporate structure. This was doubled down on post-Survivor Series, or just started taking shots all over the place. Seemingly taking a poke at the ending of Chris Jericho vs. Cody from AEW's Full Gear pay-per-view, it posted a picture of Rey Mysterio's son Dominic trying to throw in the towel as Brock Lesnar beat up his dad with the caption, "Throwing in the towel, not in WWE laugh emoji laugh emoji." It was one of the more tasteful jabs we've seen, and while it was a little bit silly because the end to the Jericho-Cody match was great, we've seen a lot worse. It did put a smile on my face. Number 2, the man behind the mask. I still don't get this. WWE's grand plan for Cedric Alexander in July 2019 was for him to be a surprise tag team partner of Roman Reigns, wear a mask so he wouldn't know it was him, but then still lose. This is why when Cedric revealed that he was under the hood, we all raised our eyebrows. You didn't exactly win, mate. However, the mask itself did have some relevancy. Why? Because it was based on Mexican icon Dos Cara's costume he had worn for years, though the shot itself was likely aimed at Caras' son, who you may know better as Alberto Del Rio. And sure, this may have been a coincidence, but that seems very unlikely. To not realise that the two were pretty much identical would be ridiculous. Overall then, this was just stupid all around. Didn't help Alexander, Roman looked on the whole time confused, and by the end of the year, Cedric was losing to Mojo Rawley on main event. this was not the best idea. Number 1, the Macho Man goes savage. This one is so easy to miss, and yet you can go and see it right now on the WWE Network. And it starts with the Macho Man Randy Savage. Gearing up for a storyline where he was going to fall out with his good friend Crush, Savage for some reason started to throw barbs at Hulk Hogan, someone he had very real beef with behind the scenes. Happening as Randy did commentary for Mike Sharp versus Tatanka, he all of a sudden was calling the Hulkster a backstabber, a prima donna, and essentially ranting about Hogan for years. Some of the jabs were repeats of what he'd said on radio WWF the week prior as well, which leads you to believe he was just desperate for people to hear this. As this wasn't anything that was meant to be on TV, Hulk just ignored it, and it got weirder when a year or so later the two both ended up in WCW and then shook hands so they could make some serious cash. It's just so weird, especially at the time. There wasn't even a hint that Savage was aiming for Hogan, and yet here, it's all he wanted to talk about. 1994. What a strange year. If you care as well, Tatanka won the match. I know you wanted to have that information. Know of any other shots WWE fired at wrestlers that none of us noticed? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from What Culture. Got a little bit of a cold, I'm sorry. I'll speak to you soon.